There have been a lot of changes in the past year to conflict mineral regulation, and the entire regulatory environment has been moving more and more towards a structured environment where companies have increased obligations to conduct due diligence to know where their materials are coming from and under what conditions they've been produced. Conflict mineral regulation really started with Section 1502 of the Dodd-Frank Act, which was passed back in 2010. And this section focused on addressing a conflict that was going on in the Great Lakes region of Africa. It had some unintended consequences. Companies actively avoided sourcing from that area in order to avoid trouble with the US government. However, by doing so, they ended up imposing a de facto embargo on the area, and that ended up hurting some of the people they were trying to help with this law. Recently, the European Union has stepped into the fray and said, we want to create a regulation that's going to address gold, tin, tantalum, tungsten, metals that are used in electronics, in order to attempt to stem the connection between these materials and funding of armed conflict, as well as addressing human rights abuses that happen in these supply chains. What they've done with their new conflict minerals law is they've changed wordings from previous regulations, moving from more general wordings as in you should do this, we recommend you do this, to more stern wordings such as you will do this, you must do this. And in addition, these conflict minerals laws do not specify a specific region, but rather insist that companies perform their own due diligence to say whether the countries they are sourcing from should be considered conflict affected or high-risk areas. Companies now have this obligation to perform the due diligence, or if they don't, to explain a good reason why not. This is a big step forward toward a future where metals and minerals are sourced, where knowing where they come from becomes normal and expected. This push towards stricter due diligence standards doesn't just apply to gold, tin, tantalum, and tungsten. Other metals are coming into the field of view of regulators, NGOs, and companies that want to eliminate human rights abuse and conflict funding in their supply chains. Of note, the London Metal Exchange has started to implement new rules for due diligence to know where metals come from in order to be able to have a brand on their exchange. On the other side of the coin, 4 industry groups have recently come together to form a joint standard of due diligence to try and harmonize what data is collected in order to have a better understanding of what's going on in their supply chains. Copper, nickel, lead, and zinc have historically had different standards for due diligence, but have recently gotten together to harmonize in order to make it much easier for companies purchasing these metals to know what data they need to collect in order to have transparency in their supply chain. I think what we're seeing is this fundamental shift in the industry where performing due diligence and knowing where your materials come from and that they've been produced responsibly is just going to be a normal cost of doing business. The idea that responsible metals should be sold at a premium is an idea of the past. The idea of the future is that responsible minerals are the baseline. We're going to see more initiatives like the London Metal Exchange, where if you don't comply with the regulations, you're going to have less access to the market, perhaps by not being able to sell on certain exchanges or import into certain countries. But what's more important are the positive consequences of doing your due diligence and being compliant. Greater market access, greater trust from consumers, and being a forerunner into the market of the future.